Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I'm really happy to be here with Lucy Gilmore talking about her book that I saw on NetGalley months ago, and I just had to have her here, The Library of Borrowed Hearts. I mean, how awesome is that? It's just a perfect match for me. So we will be digging into this book as well as the fact that it's the second book in a series and what that's all about in just a minute. I just wanted to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs and to Lucy for letting us share this program with other libraries. So when libraries get together, we just make magic. And this is going to be a magical program. I can just tell from the 10 minutes I chatted with you before, Lucy. So you can buy signed books from Lucy from Aesop's Fable. I'll put a link for that in the chat. And this is an hour-long Q&A. So if you have any questions for Lucy, please put them in the Q&A, which is the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I will ask Lucy those questions. Sometimes the chat just goes by way too fast for me to keep track of it. So please put your questions in the Q&A. I'll mention that again in a few minutes. So I'm going to sort of hand this over to Lucy, but I think that she writes women's fiction as Lucy Gilmore, and she writes cozy mysteries as Tamara.
Yes, you got it.
as Tamara Barry, and she started out as a romance reader. So she's really kind of done like the gamut here, which I think is fascinating. So welcome, Lucy, to our virtual stage. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, it's so nice to see everybody.
I know the webinar kind of takes away from that, but we will be hearing lots of great questions. So Lucy, let's start with you a little bit. We will get to the book and a couple of other books of yours, but tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where are you coming from?
So I live in Spokane, Washington. If you've read the Lonely Hearts Book Club and Library of Borrowed Hearts, they both take place kind of in the same area, which is the eastern side of Washington, the western side of Idaho. So that's kind of where I live. So the books are set where I am because this is where I'm familiar with everything, and it's a beautiful place. We are Washington State, but it is not the Seattle side, so it's very seasonal. Probably pretty similar to what you guys have. I've lived here my whole life. My husband, my kid, our pets. I read, I write. There's not a whole lot that's more than that's exciting about me, I'm afraid.
Well, it's all in the page, so we can enjoy that too. So I'm going to get to the books, like I said, in a minute, but I really want to dig into you a little bit more. So I'm going to assume you were always a reader. You just said you were a reader. What was like the first book do you remember reading?
First book, oh goodness. So I was obsessed with the Laura Ingalls Wilder books as a kid. I remember, so I have this aunt who she was an elementary school teacher, middle school teacher when I was a kid. And my family is huge. So my mom has like 8 brothers and sisters. So she had tons of nephews and nieces. But for Christmas every year, she would buy every single one of her nieces and nephews a book.
Ooh.
And on Christmas Eve, everybody would get their presents. And I was like the only one who couldn't wait to see what Aunt Kate got because she always seemed to know exactly what was right for my age and my where I was like in the path. And so it kind of continued. It's like all my other cousins kind of fell away, but every Christmas she would pick another book. I mean, she like worked me up through like Catherine Called Birdie was a big one. And then I don't remember the exact path. She gave me Jane Eyre at one point, and she gave me a bunch of other historicals. And ended up when I was 17, she got me Pride and Prejudice, and she confessed later that that had been her goal. So she was like grooming me, I guess you could say, to like love romance and Pride and Prejudice as the end. And so it worked. She kind of like just introduced me as a scale to love books. And so like all of my reading is kind of thanks to Aunt Kate because
Mhm.
she was a reader and a writer, and then she kind of made me one too.
So I have to ask about that though. Did you only read the books that she recommended, or did you read other genres as well?
Oh, I read everything. I have a really bad memory, so I couldn't tell you the names of most of them, but there were like some witchy ones that I loved and magical ones and just anything I could get my hands on. I think I read. Oh, Nancy Drew was a big one. Sweet Valley High.
Mhm. I was going to say I might be a little bit older than you, but I remember I was a Nancy Drew reader. I actually wrote a Nancy Drew book when I was in like, I don't know.
What?
I want because
Still
I
have it?
no, I threw it away because
Oh,
it's so awful. I wrote like 200 pages, but I wanted
it's
Nancy and
fun to read now, though.
it would have been, yeah. But I remember some of the awfulness of it, but I wanted Nancy and Ned to get together.
Mm-hmm.
My
Everyone, yeah. I liked the ones there was like the crossovers with Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. Those were some of my favorites because I wanted that dynamic to go in a different direction.
Me too. Me too. I was just like, but don't cheat on Ned. Don't cheat on Ned. So you've done all this reading. When did you think that you were going to be a writer?
Things that I always wanted to be. I remember growing up. So my dad loves soccer. He was my soccer coach. He pushed all of us kids into soccer. It was kind of our thing growing up. And there was always this conference every year. It was like the Young Writers Conference. And I always wanted to go more than anything in the whole world. And I always got an invitation because only like 2 or 3 kids in every class got one. But it was the same weekend as this big soccer tournament. And so my dad would never let me go. And I missed it every year, and I was always so devastated because Patrick McManus is a kid's author who kind of lives around here, and he was always there. It was a big deal. And I get really mad now, and I'm like, Dad, you didn't let me go to this writers' conference. You like stifled my young dreams. And he's like, well, are you a professional soccer player or are you a writer now? So I guess he wins. But yeah, so I wanted to be a writer really early on, but it's one of those things that it's hard to picture what the life looks like and what the career looks like. So it took me a while to get there, but it was definitely always a dream.
Hmm. So did you have a different career, maybe as a soccer star before become making writing? Are you a full-time writer?
That was just my dad. He thought I was great. I wasn't that good.
Dads are supposed to be like that though. So, but were you did you have a second career and then come back to writing or come to writing?
So I've kind of always been a writer. I graduated from college with English lit degree, and I jumped right into just freelance writing. So doing writing for the web, Facebook posts, blog posts, tweets, stuff like that. And then I wrote my first book when I was 28, I want to say, and it's a terrible book and it will never see the light of day. But so in the time between then and now, I've always kind of filled in the gaps with freelance writing. So that's still very much a part of what I do.
So that one that will never see the light of day, did you keep it? Not like my Nancy Drew?
I do. I have one like printed out copy. It's the only one that exists. It's on one of those bookshelves back there. Yes, I'm not going to read it because it's terrible and I'm not going to do anything with it, but it's fun to have.
Definitely. I mean, it's a part of your history, right? So when you wrote, so that was the book you wrote at 28. When did you, what was your road to getting actually published? Did you find an agent? Did you self-publish? What was that?
So by the time I started publishing, it was in 2012, which was like the golden age of digital publishing. That's when all of it was taking off. So I started off with ePress. So Sam Haines Samhain, I don't remember how to pronounce it. I published with them and with Carina Press, which was Harlequin's E-line. So I kind of started off writing romance in the digital space. And then from there, I moved to where I am now.
Yes, I think it's Samheim. Samheim, I think.
It's one of those words that, yeah, I'll never get it. I
Okay.
can read words. I can't say them.
We had this conversation earlier about me. I'm going to go to a question from Jane that she loved the story of receiving books from your aunt. Did she ever give you, she did give you Wuthering Heights, right? And you did read it.
Not Wuthering Heights. Jane Eyre was one that she gave me. I don't think that it was, I'm pretty sure the first time I read Wuthering Heights was in school. I think it was high school. I think it was assigned.
Okay.
But I have read it several times since then.
Mhm. I mean, if you're going to read Jane Eyre, you're going to read Wuthering Heights, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've read all of the Brontes.
Have you read all of the Austens?
Yes, yes, definitely. Well, not Sanditon. I started that one, but it didn't feel right.
Why?
Why didn't it feel right, or why did they publish it?
Why did it not feel right to you?
Because it was the one she started and never finished. And so someone else took over, and at that point, it just no longer felt like an Austen story, I guess.
Yeah,
I did like the BBC adaptation, though.
yeah, I've watched it. I've enjoyed it. So yes, starting writing, you started off with that sort of smaller presses and things like that. At that point, did you have an agent?
I did. I've been through several. I've had three in the totality of my career. The one I have now, we've been together for like 8, 9 years, so it's been a while.
Mhm.
But it's the publishing industry. For those of you who don't know, it's a roller coaster ride. There are ups and there are downs.
I have heard, especially with the big two, three, four, five, whatever, constantly changing, hard to keep up. Cindy says, I've always been a reader, starting with the Bobbsey twins. I also enjoyed them. And then Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. How do you go from being a reader to a writer? Like, how do you come up with a plot, like your first plot?
Oh, so for me, when I go to bed at night, I tell myself a story. Like that's how I fall asleep. So I was crafting stories, and I've always done that. I've done that since I was a little kid. So um, there was a lot of storytelling happening internally, and it was just like an extension because I read books all the time and I read books all day. So I wanted to continue telling the stories. I guess it was almost like fan fiction inside my head. But I think that if you're asking like how, if that's something you want to do, I do think that fan fiction is not a terrible bridge, because you can play with characters in a world that already exists and put your own spin on it, and it just gets you a feel for how writing works and crafting language, and then from there you can start to create your own worlds and your own characters.
Seems really difficult to me because you can pick up the characters, but then you have to come up with your own story, your own plot. That's, I think, really, from my perspective as a not writer, that seems like it would be like magic. Like, how do you do that?
You could just take a character that you love. You could take, Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights and like put him at a circus in 1920. Like there you go. Like what would he do? Because we already know who he is as a person and what kind of choices he makes. So you can kind of imagine what choices he would make in that situation. For
So
Heathcliff, they would not be good choices. He does not make good choices.
I'm going to say if you write that, I would read it because now I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. Heathcliff at the circus. So you started off, were your first books published romance? They were romances, right?
Hmm.
And they were under a different name.
Yes, I wrote as Tamara Morgan, who you can kind of see one of my covers behind me right there.
Mhm.
So I published quite a few books as Tamara Morgan. Probably 20, a little over 20.
Oh my gosh, wow. I did not know this, and I'm an avid romance reader, so I am going to have to go find your backlist.
And they don't exist anymore because it was all on the digital platforms. And so I've gotten the rights back. So I have all the books back and I haven't decided yet what I want to do with them. So they're in limbo right now.
If you need any help, I'm here for you. Okay, so we had talked about changing the names to change, why you use different names for different things. Eva Jane asks, romance, mystery, fiction. Is it easy to switch from one to another, or are you planning on focusing on one genre, or had you planned on focusing on one genre?
So I'm really lucky because both my cozy mysteries and my women's fiction and romance are through the same publisher. And so we have worked up a system where I switch back and forth. So I write a romance, women's fiction, and then I write a mystery. And I can set my schedule so that I never have to write two of the same book back to back. And I get to stagger it and I get to stagger the releases. So it's really nice because when you're writing a book, it takes 4 months, 6 months to get this draft on. You are so tired of that book by the time you're done with it, and you're tired. Well, for me at least, I'm tired of the genre. I'm tired of everything. So I just get to switch. So I'm like, these people talking about books and having these big emotions. You know what we need to do? I want to kill somebody. So I get to switch, and then I get to go play with murder for a little while. And then when that gets boring, I get to, I'm done with that book. I get to go back to the other world. So it's perfect for me.
So I was going to say, if you want to switch over to killing somebody, then when you go back to romance, is it you want somebody to
Way Library Borrowed Hearts it's got a lot of the mystery elements,
Mhm.
because they're kind of uncovering the past story. So I do think there are times when my two genres kind of overlap without me necessarily making that happen on purpose.
I was talking about the romance in terms of having relations, but I like your answer better.
Well, I will say all of my mysteries and all of my books, there's always love in them.
Mhm.
Clearly not as graphic as they get in the romance novels, but there's always love.
Okay. Sometimes it's nice to have both so you can you don't have to pick and choose. And I do know that your books always have a happy ending. So it doesn't necessarily mean that a couple gets together, but that everything is resolved.
Yes, that's very important to me. Partly because of my romance roots and partly because I don't like it when things end sad.
Mm, I'm with you. Um, so let's get into the Library of Borrowed Hearts. Um, how so there's a second book in the series, and the first book is called the the Lonely Hearts Book Club. So obviously there's a theme here around books and libraries and things like that. How did this series come to you?
So they're technically not connected, the two books. So they have the same vibe, same kind of basic setup, but they are two totally different stories in two totally different worlds.
Oh.
And it was actually pitched to me from my editor. So I had written a couple of romances as Lucy Gilmore, and they were doing okay. But she's like, I really just want to steer you in the uplit women's fiction direction. She's like, I have this great idea. It's about a cranky old man who comes to the library every day, and then one day he doesn't show up, and the librarian he kind of battles with goes to check on him, and they start a book club. She's like, do you think that's something you can write? And I was like, of course I can. So that's where the Lonely Hearts Book Club came from. Is so she pitched me this idea. We decided to run with it. I wrote the book. It was really fun. I loved it. It was well received. And then the time came to write the second book. And I was like, well, what are we going to do? And she's like, well, for a second book, what we want is the exact same thing, only different. So that is basically what the Library of Borrowed Hearts is. You have a curmudgeon, you have this sweet librarian, you have this community they make together, but a totally different like scope of the story.
Mhm. Oh, I'm actually completely flummoxed because I really did think, I mean, from reading, like, as much as I did, I was just like, these are definitely together. But anyways, I'll get over it. Is that unusual?
Are done by the same artist too, and they're made to overlap. So your confusion is completely justified.
Oh, okay, good. Because as a librarian, I'll have to give away my library card if I'm if I'm so completely off about books. But what was the this is flummoxes me because I didn't realize that your publisher would come to you with an idea. Like I didn't think they went to authors with ideas. I thought the authors always had to pitch ideas to them.
Pretty rare. I've been with this publisher and this editor for a while, and so we have a good rapport and a good relationship. So I think we're at the point where we're both comfortable with that. I don't know that it's very common. I haven't heard of it very much. And
Is
I'm
your
very grateful for it because it's really nice for someone to come to you and say, like, this is what we want. Here's the structure, and then to kind of let me color within and without the lines that I've been giving.
Mhm. So is your publisher sort of like a stifled writer that they have these ideas, but no, they don't have the time or the ability to write it?
I like to think of it as they have like a crystal ball. So, the market changes and the market trends and what's going to be popular. There's no way that any of us, more mere mortals can figure out what's going to be the next big thing. But I feel kind of like they have an eye on what's going to come next. And so for them, I think it's more like, we think this is going to be big. We need something in this space. And they know that I can deliver it
Mhm.
within a certain amount of time.
Yep. Women's fiction just flies off the shelves in our library. Like they are right on. But let's talk about the Borrowed Hearts book. It's such an interesting concept. Can you talk a little bit about what is the concept of this book?
So, like I said, it's the grouchy old man and the librarian. And in this case, what my publisher asked for was they wanted marginalia. So they wanted a story kind of unfolded in the margins. And so we were kind of batting ideas around about how we could make that work. And we were like, well, what if it's a love story that takes place in the past? And she stumbles across it and she like tries to figure it out. And then I was like, well, that's amazing. What if I actually went back in time and told that story as well as the first one? And she said, that's great, run with it. And from there, I just kind of I wanted to set it in my local area again, like I had with the first book, just because I really enjoyed that. And in both books, they're both based on real libraries, and I visited both libraries and was given tours by the amazing librarians. And so there's little elements in both of them that are real. So like in Lonely Hearts Book Club, they go into like a storeroom that's called Area 51, and that's the real name of it in theirs. And the creepy basement in the Library of Borrowed Hearts is their real creepy basement. But anyway, so I knew that I wanted to tell this past and present story, and I wanted to do it in my area. And Colville, the city where it takes place, really did have a radar base in the 60s. And so it's a totally different dynamic than what the city has today. It's kind of like a quieter, ghost, sleepy town. And so I thought that was a really good setup because it was such a focal point for our state in the 60s and then just stopped. So the rich history already existed. And so I kind of just tapped in and stole it. Borrowed it.
Borrowed it, yes. I mean, we're libraries, we borrow.
Adapted it.
Jennifer says in the chat that she struggled with Catherine and how leaving him negatively affected Jasper.
So on the subject of Wuthering Heights, the whole idea behind Jasper and Catherine was that they're the modern day equivalent or the 60s equivalent of Heathcliff and the other Catherine. And have strong feelings about Wuthering Heights. Like I said, Heathcliff didn't make good choices, Catherine didn't make good choices, and so I didn't want them to make good choices either. Because to be true to the original text, you have to take these, in Wuthering Heights' case, two terrible people who make bad choices, and with Catherine and Jasper, and it's two flawed, normal people who also make terrible choices.
Mhm.
So she's not necessarily meant to be loved. Catherine is. She is meant to be complicated and complex.
Mm-hmm. And which is maybe so like we talked about romance a little bit, but I think the interesting thing about this book is that there is love in it, but it's not like romantic love. There is romantic love there, but like the story, the current day story is really about love and loneliness and connecting, which I think your books do beautifully.
Yeah, and that's the romance background, because the love between two people is great, but I think the love that you make in a found family and a community is actually more powerful and shapes who you are as a person even more.
I'm a huge fan of found family. Um,
Indeed.
I'm gonna go back to the writing a little bit because Eva Jane asks, do you get together with other authors and discuss your books? I'm particularly thinking about authors who are part of Sisters in Crime, which is, I don't know if you know them, but there's an organization, I think in Maine. Anyway, so and they, bat books back and forth with each other all the time. Do you have that?
So I do have quite a few author friends, both locally and spread out throughout the globe. We don't talk about our books as much as we do about the publishing world. So it's less of a creative outlet and more of a we need to let off steam outlet. um, I think earlier on in my career, the talking about the books and working through plots and figuring that out was more a part of it. Now I'm pretty internalized and isolated in the way I write the books, and I just need that outlet for other reasons.
Hmm. Do you have a readers group that beta reads your books before they go out?
I do not. No one reads my books until they get into my editor's hands. I almost never send it to my agent, my family, my friends. Nobody gets it.
Any particular reason why?
I I just kind of started off that way, and now it's kind of like a superstition. Like don't wash your socks after you win the World Series.
Gosh, if the next time I see you, your hair is down like down to your elbows, I'll be like, okay, on the street. That's so funny. So yeah, um, Karen asks, do you write in the same space, same time of day? What's your writing day look like?
Yes, I get up in the morning, have my coffee, and then I sit down. I have a word count goal that I have to hit every day, and then I sit down until I reach it. And sometimes it goes really fast when the writing is good, and sometimes it takes me all day when the writing is bad, but I don't stop till I get there.
Wow. Can I ask what your writing goal is? Like, is it a number of
A
words?
thousand words.
How many?
1,000 words.
Oh,
So it's not a huge amount. It's if you wanted to write a book, that's about 3 months. If you don't go back and take anything out or change anything.
mm-hmm. And do you write every day, like Saturdays and Sundays as well?
I do 7 days a week. I do smaller amounts every day, just because the way I'm built. I know that like there are writers who go on writers retreats and like sit down and write for 8 hours a day. I absolutely cannot. My attention span does not sustain that sort of writing. I'm better in small increments.
Mm-hmm. And are you, now that you've had so many books out, can you really kind of make your own schedule and all of that? I mean, do you write, is writing your job now? Like, are you a full-time writer?
Yeah, I am a full-time writer. And I do get to pick my own deadlines and kind of set my own schedule. So for the books being turned in, like when edits are sent to me or copy edits, that's out of the blue. And it's always like, you have 2 weeks to turn these in. And so I kind of have to rearrange everything. But
Mm-hmm.
the
Wow.
parts I can control, I do control. The parts I can't, I have learned to accept.
Probably a good philosophy especially in the publishing world, which can be so tricky sometimes. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the research that you did into this book. You said you went to the libraries. What kind of did you have to do any research about what marginalia is and how it affects books?
So I in both books, they're both kind of set. based around 3 to 4 different books, works of literature, and I did pick books that I was familiar with. So, in Lonely Hearts Book Club, when my editor and I were working on it together, we were trying to come up with. She said, "I want you to pick books that the average reader will have read, the ones that they're on the top 100 books that everybody should have read." And she like sent me links to the ones. So pick books off this list, and then she goes, "But don't only pick books by dead white guys." And if you look at those lists, they're like 98% dead white guys. And so for the first book there and this one, I had to really find ones that kind of we're all familiar with and are technically classics, but that don't fall into the stereotypes and the same old, same old.
Mhm.
So I did pick books that I was already familiar with. The only one I hadn't read was Tropic of Cancer. And I knew that I had wanted like a scandalous 1960s book. And so I was thinking like D.H. Lawrence or something like that.
Mhm.
And my husband goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. If you want a scandalous 1960s book, you need Tropic of Cancer." And I'd never heard of it. I have like an English lit degree, so I'm a little bit ashamed of that. I was like, "I've never heard of that. What is it?" And he just laughed and drove me to the bookstore. And then I bought it and I read it. And the whole time I was just like, I couldn't believe that was actually, it's not my favorite book in the world. Um, but it was really fun to read that one for the first time. And incorporated in. But otherwise, yes, the research is based on books that I have read and have a close knowledge of already.
Mhm. I guess for me, like the curious question is about the psychology of your characters. Like, how did you develop them to be who they were? I know they told you like cranky old guy, librarian, but then how did you develop them into the people that they became?
So I am not a plotter. I'm a pantser. For
Mm.
those of you who don't know, that means I fly by the seat of my pants. So I kind of just go into a book having a basic idea of what the setup is. And so the characters really make themselves. Once I kind of introduce them on the page and put them in the situation, they're the ones who tell me who they are rather than the other way around. So uh, it's hard to explain the process because the process is so internalized that even I don't always understand what's happening.
Mhm. And do you write linearly or do you write like as it comes to
No,
you?
I completely because I don't know, I don't outline and I don't know what the story is. I have to go in a straight line or we won't know. People have likened it to like driving a windy mountain road in the fog, and all you can see is as far as your headlights go. And so that's kind of how it is for me. I know what's ahead a little bit, and then once I get there, I can see the next part, and then I can see the next part. So I don't know the ending until I get there, which is super
Wow.
funny.
Does that ever scare you?
Every time. There's a point in every book where I'm just like, this isn't going to work. This is going to be the one time it's not going to work. But it always does. It always has. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. Gotcha. So let's go back to then, since you're a pantser, what comes first to you? Character, setting, plot, what?
Just the basic setup, really. And I have been known to change things because nothing is written in stone. Like I will take out an entire character, I will change an entire city, I will, if it's not working for whatever reason, I will just throw it out and fix whatever that is. I'm not emotionally attached to anything so hard that I can't change it.
Mhm. And what would cause you to throw out a character?
Well, if I put an animal in, a lot of times I'll forget. So, like pets are really hard. Like if you just have like a pet dog or a pet cat, or even just like a nosy neighbor, they're like super fun, and you have them in there, and then like 20 pages later, you're like, oh, I totally forgot that existed. And sometimes I'll just take them out because it's easier than putting them back in.
Yeah, I've never really understood this pantsing thing because I'm like, you do have so many names and you have so many descriptions of people and things like and all of that. Like, how do you keep track of it then?
I just do. Like I'm always thinking about the books and the characters. Like they're always with me when I'm walking my dogs or doing the dishes or taking a shower. Like I'm always ruminating on what's happening and what's going to come next. And
Mhm.
so there's never turns off. So it's always there.
To me, like that's fascinating because you've written so many books now. How do you not get confused with, oh, I used Susanna in 2 books ago. Oh, I completely forgot.
Oh, I do. I do that. That's where it's really nice to have one publisher for both pen names because they'll be like, you've already done this. Or you have 3 characters with this name. Oops. So it's
So,
a team. It's a team effort very much.
mhm. And I like what you said about this particular book having both mystery and romantic elements to it. What made you do that as opposed to like really keeping it separate?
I think it just kind of happened. Um, I in order to keep the plot moving, I needed to have some sort of element of her not understanding what was happening in the past. So the mystery kind of worked itself in.
Hmm. As a librarian, I'm going to say that I don't love that somebody was writing in a library book, but I actually really love the story, the concept of this whole thing, like I said before. So,
No, no librarian approves of that part. Sorry.
a little tough to swallow, but that's okay. That's okay. We have to get over ourselves. And this is fiction. Remember that it's fiction. So, um, how I know she's alone. She's got like the kids, and then she's got this cranky person who wants to buy this book for an enormous amount of money. What keeps her from just selling it?
Well, she's at a point in her life where, if you have kids, she's very young and she effectively is raising three children. So she has no time for herself. She has nothing for herself. She has nothing to call her own. And so I think when this falls in her lap, she kind of just adopts it as something that she can have for herself and a way to keep herself busy while trying to raise a family. And I think anybody with kids can kind of understand that motivation because sometimes you just need something that's your own.
Hmm. But she was also struggling financially. So like, uh, did she, in your mind, when you were writing this, did you ever think, okay, maybe she just needs to do this thing and then she can solve the mystery?
Yeah, I think in real life, probably she would have, but I tried to make it so that she's just not a person who likes to accept help. And
Mm.
accepting that check for that amount would have been basically taking help that she's against morally.
Oh, I like that. I like that she stuck to her morals or her herself, like who she was.
Mhm.
Karen asks, how do you unwind if and when writing isn't going well for you?
So I kind of already mentioned those. So the taking a shower, taking my dogs for a walk, you just have to kind of alter the space. It's amazing what getting up from the computer and going outside will do. It's like the thing where if you're suffering, you're struggling with anxiety or mental health, and everybody's like, "Well, just go outside and take a walk," and you're like, "No, I don't want to take a walk. That's not going to fix it," and then it kind of does. So it's kind of what it is. I hate that that's the answer and that that's the easy way to do it, but honestly, taking a walk going outside and touching grass, it makes a big difference.
Hmm. Just sort of getting away from it for a little while, maybe.
Yeah,
But
putting
it's always
space between.
yeah, but it's always in your head. So what is it about being outside that moves you away from it a little bit further than just
I
going to?
don't know. There's something magical about showers, about running water, and about moving, and about walking. Like I'm not the only one this happens to. There are several authors who will work through tricky plot problems in the shower. There's just something about the ambient noise and the. I think it's because you can't do anything else. You can't be on your phone. You can't be watching TV. You can't be like taking notes. It's just you and your brain. It gives you some kind of clarity that it's hard to find
Mhm.
in our modern world.
Mhm. And when you are writing, do you have to completely shut the world out? Do you have to like everything's quiet, or do you like to have some background music on or something?
When I first started writing, my kid was 3. And so I wrote in waiting rooms, I wrote in the car in the parking lot, I wrote with, screams happening. So I can write anywhere under any conditions. I try to write in this room because it's a nice office that I have, but if I had to write, sitting on the edge of a cliff, I would be fine.
That is a sign of a true writer. Is that you just write.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's probably not ideal, but and I only have the one kid, which I think makes a difference. I think if you had more, it might be a little bit more challenging to make that work.
Eva Jane asks, now that Library of Borrowed Hearts is published, have you returned to the Tamara, am I saying that?
You still have
Tamara Barry mystery series for your next book? Have you switched over or are you getting demands for more of this?
have switched over. I am writing a Tamara. If the mystery series that you're referring to is the By the Book mystery series, there will not be a fourth book. That is one of my most often asked questions, and I know everybody wants a book 4, but that series did not get picked up for more. But I am starting a new Tamara mystery series starting March of next year.
So why, if you have a fourth book in your head or if readers are asking for, would you ever consider just self-publishing it?
I have considered it. I don't love self-publishing. So the amount of business savvy and work outside of writing that goes, the people who succeed at self-publishing are absolute dynamic entrepreneurs who can do almost anything, in my opinion. I am not that person. So it's hard. I would rather just hand my book to an editor or a publisher and kind of let them handle it from there. So I think about it sometimes, but the logistics are a lot.
Yeah, that is very true, except that you're already established. So to do like a one-off, because I'm just pushing this because Eva says, I'm sorry to hear that. I really enjoyed the Buy the Book series. And I'm sure you get all kinds of stuff about it. But yeah, I just wonder if because you're established, that it would be a bit easier for you than somebody coming out the gate.
And I don't say never, because that has been a really fun series.
Mhm. Beatrice says, I love listening to how the process of your writing is intriguing. I'll be writing 1,000 words a day. That would be fabulous.
If you can only do 500 a day, like any amount will get you there in the end. If you can write a book in a year and that's 300 words a day, like that's a perfectly respectable amount of time.
Mhm. What's your favorite part of writing this book?
Of the Library of Borrowed
Yeah,
Hearts.
yeah. Sorry,
So this
I'm mixing up the
that's fine.
titles, so I just something like this current book, this current book.
The siblings were my favorite part of this book. So her three younger siblings were such they leapt onto the page and they had their own personalities and they were very big personalities. So I just kind of let them run. They're a little bit based on if you've read Frederica by Georgette Hare. She's one of my favorite romance and cozy mystery authors. So it's kind of based on her family.
Oh, so fun. What was the hardest part of writing it?
Probably the historical bits. I'm not super great at research. I'm one of those researchers who falls down rabbit holes and then, ooh, something shiny, and it's hard for me to do super deep dives. So I was a little bit worried about the historical aspects. So I honored them the best I could and then just made up the bits that I couldn't.
Well, it sounds like you did fine. Also, you are a writer, so you can take writer's license, and we would never know. Although I have to say, most of the history, not most, but a lot of the history I have learned through romance books. So,
I know, and that scares me because like how much of that really is real, you know? But
Mhm.
that's true of any medium. It's movies, it's books, it's articles, it's links online.
Right, right. Of course. I don't just leave it to that. I do look things up, but I remember thinking like, oh, this is probably something I need to look into a bit more. Have you thought about other genres other than women's fiction and mysteries?
Not really. I always wanted to write a thriller, but my voice just doesn't come out right. So do you have to kind of go to a dark place to write that sort of book, sci-fi or thriller or anything like that, or horror? And I just can't get there.
Mhm.
And I don't know that I want to. My mood is pretty much very strongly affected by what I'm writing at any given time. So I like to keep it light.
I think you would do an amazing job at a sci-fi book. It doesn't have to be heavy, but it could be like, I mean,
You're telling my husband he wants me to write like the Murderbot style.
yes.
Um, yeah.
I love that. Or the have you read Strangelove by Anna Guire?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's probably the funniest sci-fi book I've ever read.
Write it down.
For all of you in the chat, it's Anne Aguirre.
The
And
first stuff. I just haven't read that one. Strange Love.
Strangelove. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, this is not about me, but I did love that book. I sort of feel like you could do anything. Like you're so versatile. You started off with romance and you went to mystery. Now you're writing women's fiction and but I love that you know what you want to do.
Yeah, I think it helps that I like read across all those spectrums too. I There's very few genres that I won't touch.
Hmm. And what I want to talk a little bit about success because we talked about that a little bit before we started, like that do you feel like you're successful in the publishing world? Because we were talking about Lucy Score and you're like, oh, she's like, whatever, and she's doing amazing. But like, where are you in your career and journey?
It's a hard question. So with the Lonely Hearts Book Club out last year, I kind of hit a new level that I hadn't reached before. So it was always kind of like struggling to find my readership, struggling to get those numbers, and I'd had moderate successes. And the most important thing was that I kept getting contracts. If you ask a lot of writers what the definition of success is, it's to have a career, to keep writing and to not have, all the doors shut in your face. And so in that respect, I have always been successful because I have always been fortunate enough to be given chances and opportunities. But until the Lonely Hearts Book Club came out, I didn't really know big commercial success. But that one had gotten picked as the Barnes and Noble monthly pick for April of last year. And so that just kind of pushed things up. Oh, and I also won an Edgar for one of my mysteries last year. So those kind of happened simultaneously. So I leveled up, I guess you could say, at that point, and now we're just kind of seeing where it goes.
Mm-hmm. So the Edgar is not in your bio. I think it needs to be.
Oh, is it not? Oh, well, yes, I'm an Edgar Award-winning author, technically.
Reality, that is true. That's amazing. That's really good. I mean, like you put in all this effort and then the awards are nice and everything. I mean, obviously being able to work constantly is in your chosen field, but getting that recognition must have been really nice.
It was so unexpected, and so out of the blue. So I don't know that it's all the way sunk in even now. But so much of what a writer does is isolated. So I'm in this room, I'm in this house, I'm in my own little world, and I only occasionally step out of it into the real world. So I think I sometimes forget.
Mhm. So when the Lonely Hearts Book Club became a little bit more commercial and more successful or in terms of sales, did you find there were more demands on you from your publisher, from readers, from librarians who are like, can you do a program with me?
My favorite thing is that I suddenly started getting asked by other publishers and other editors to blurb books. So that's when you have like a quote on the cover or in the inside, and nobody had ever asked me for those before. And then all of a sudden, I was getting all these requests, and it's super funny because I never say no. Like if anybody sends me a book, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it because it's like still so shiny and new to me, and I'm super excited to be able to read other people's work early and share it with the world. So that's been really fun.
That to me is like the most amazing thing about the authors in general is they're so generous with other authors. Even if they've hit like a bit of success, they're willing to share that with other people. Not everybody, like of course there's always outliers, but like that in the bell curve, I've just found everybody to be so nice.
Well, like I said, it's so isolated and so hard that everyone, you want everyone to come in and be a part of this amazing thing. I think
Hmm.
for most of us. I agree. Most authors I've met have been absolutely lovely.
Hmm. But you don't spend a lot of time with them because you're more you don't like do reader the groups and things like that. Or do you go to conferences?
Not really. I've been to a few, but for the most part, I'm very much I'm a cranky old curmudgeon hermit in my house.
Well, if you ever
My
want
future, my future is Jasper's.
That's so funny. So there's a little bit of autobiography there as well.
Mhm. Yeah, if I have to pick a character I most connect with, it's the grouchy old men.
So maybe that's why your publisher knew that this was the right book for you. So you should come to our area in Maine. They have this thing called the Maine Mystery Clam Bake or something, and it's like all of these amazing mystery writers come together and they just do this massive book sale and talk about books. It's really fun.
When you first approached me, I thought you were from Ashland, Oregon, library, because I do a mystery event there. So they've just started doing like a mystery event in October in Ashland. Ashland, Oregon is where the Shakespeare Festival is.
Mhm.
For those of you who don't know, so there's a pretty big mystery festival there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's 17 Ashlands in the United States. So
There are quite a few of you.
they are. We get confused for other Ashlands all the time, but we're the best. Um, Although we don't have a Shakespeare festival, so we'll have to work on that. So what is happening next for you? Like, what are you starting to work on now? You had said that you're not doing the next by the book, the fourth one, but you're starting a new Tamara Berry series.
Yeah, so that series, the first book is called Murder Runs in the Family, and it's about this like a millennial 30-something woman whose life kind of falls apart. And so she goes to live in her grandma's retirement community in Arizona. And her grandma is like a true crime podcaster. And one of the members of her true crime podcast dies, and the grandma gets arrested. So she kind of has to free her. So it's kind of fun because it's like a millennial boomer dynamic with, a woman living in her grandma's retirement community, which is not the future that anyone wants.
I don't know, like cheap housing, maybe.
So
Well,
that's a
it's
fun. That's been a
funny.
fun series.
Yeah. So where did this series come out, like the idea for this one come out for you?
So I had pitched it as Only Murders in the Retirement Community. So it was kind of like, because I love Only Murders. I'm a TV watch. I watch all the shows. So Only Murders in the Building is one of my favorite TV shows. And so I kind of wanted that one where it's got the millennial boomer dynamic going on, with the murder podcast, and then just set in Arizona. So it's on my side of the country.
Mhm. And I wanted to ask you something that you said a little while ago about you thought about writing a thriller, but what drew you to writing cozies?
So it's a fun story. So when my very first cozy mystery is called Seances Are for Suckers, and it's about this woman who is a con woman, and she pretends to be a medium who goes to people's houses and gets rid of their ghosts, but really she's just fleecing them of their money. And then she encounters a dead body and a real ghost, and solves crime from there. But I had originally written it as a proposal. So a proposal is 3 chapters and a synopsis, and that's kind of what you send out to publishers to see if they're interested. And I had written it as a romance novel and had sent it out. To my agent sent it out to publishers, and they were all like, no, 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 no. And then one, Kensington, came back and said, we don't have room in our romance lineup right now, but we love this. Could you put a dead body and a cat in it and make it a cozy mystery? And I was like, sure, how hard could it be? I read Nancy Drew and I read Georgette Hare's mysteries. And so I'm familiar with the genre and I enjoy the genre. So I put a dead body and a cat in it, and the rest is history.
What do you think is the appeal to readers for cozy mysteries?
It's feeling of comfort. So they almost all take place in like small towns, and it's the same fun, eclectic group of people that you return to time and time again, and nobody ever really gets hurt. I mean, there's a death and there's murder, but nobody is actually harmed. Nobody you care about dies, and so I feel like it's like that. To me, it's like watching a sitcom where you just check in every week because it's like family. They're like friends. You're familiar with them, you like them, you want to hang out with them for a half hour. So to me, that's kind of what the itch that cozy mysteries scratch.
Mm-hmm. I always think of Cabot Cove and Murder She Wrote, and I always think I would not want to live there. I would not want to be her friend because somebody in her sphere always dies.
There's a fun statistic where per capita there are more deaths in Cabot Cove than every single city in the United States except for Tijuana. It's the official murder capital of the world.
So I'm not surprised. Yeah, I mean, but I'm not a huge cozy mystery reader, but I think that from what I see in the library, people really like to they like the fact that there's not violence in it. Like there is death, but it's off screen, and then it's the relationships they keep coming back for.
Yeah, yeah. So you get more plot than you do in a lot of other types of genres, because you know that there's going to be a murder to solve and the story is going to progress in a certain way. But then you also get all like I said, the friends, the family, the people you just want to hang out with.
Mm-hmm. And so the cat, stereotypical. What
Yes, they love cats.
I know. What are other elements? I mean, I know about the there's like a baking one, and there's like inns and those kind of things. Are those just like anchors for cozy mysteries so that there's a thing that everybody
A few like ironclad rules. So it's like you said, no violence. There's very little swearing, very little sex. There are some books that are pushing the boundaries now and are blurring those lines, but for the most part, that's true. And then one of the big ones is that your sleuth cannot be a law enforcement member. So it needs to be an amateur who's kind of plunked into this situation from out of nowhere. I think so that the readers can identify, and just so that it kind of it never gets dark because it's not a person whose career is dark.
Mm.
Like I assume, policemen and detectives have seen so much that they wouldn't be as quite as cavalier as our sleuths are sometimes. So that's a fun aspect. And then the hobbies, the baking or the cute towns. I think that's just a really good way to market them and to package them. So whatever your interest, you can find a cozy mystery that fits.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're probably supposed to be talking about the Library of Borrowed Hearts, but I'm really curious about this. Is how when your sleuth is like somebody who's not an officer or has no history in that, how do you balance having them sleuthing but not making the police look incompetent?
You can just make there's kind of 2 ways to do it. You can have them be like a partnership with the cops, or you can have them be antagonistic with the cops, or I guess you can also just have the cops be really dumb and not good at their jobs. So there's lots of ways that they can work with the law enforcement dynamic. As a writer of cozy mysteries, I like that they're not professionals because then I don't have to be professional. So
Mm.
in my by the book mysteries series, especially, like the author gets things wrong all the time, and that's because we're not cops and she doesn't have to be. So she's allowed to get it wrong, so I can get it wrong. So it makes it a lot easier to write.
So I'm not getting any more questions from people, but I do want to know, when can we look forward to your next book? We talked about what it's going to be, but when will it be?
So the Tamara Berry book will be March 11th next year, and then I also have a Lucy Gilmore. So you probably gonna have one Tamara Berry and one Lucy Gilmore every year for a while.
Tell me more about the
Uh,
next Lucy Gilmore.
yeah, it's called The Trouble with Sisters, and it's not bookish at all. So it's two sisters who their grandmother dies and leaves them like this family ring that's supposed to bring love to whoever wears it. But both of them are in like hot mess parts of their lives and relationships, and so they don't want it. And so they kind of hot potato it back and forth, like slip it into the other's purse and put it in the other's pocket so that the other one has to be cursed. And so it's kind of like that story. It's a little romantic, but it's not a romance.
Hmm. And so if we're going to expect both of those, so you're going to really split your time between those cozy mysteries and the women's fiction now.
Yeah, that's where I'm comfortable. And the 2 books a year is it's a nice when you write romance, like those come out really fast. Like they want you to do 3 a year, they want 4 a year. For the women's fiction and cozy mystery, you can kind of slow it down a little bit, which has been nice.
Yeah, I was going to say some of my favorite romance writers, some of them put out like 6 books a year. And I'm like,
Hmm. And that's the industry. The industry wants that. So,
mhm,
but it's hard to sustain that for a long time.
mhm. I would imagine. I mean, as a reader, I'll read the book in a day and then I want the next one.
Yeah, it can be really hard. Like if somebody binges all 3 books in a series that I spent a year and a half writing, because they'll pick up things that, when you're reading them in 3 days and supposed to writing them for 1.5 months, you know more than I do. By the time the end of the 3rd book comes around,
Yeah.
for
Well,
sure.
you've also moved on to at least the next book from that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I've turned in books that are not coming out till 2026. Like I'm years ahead at this point.
Wow. That is just so amazing. Like, I mean, I know we were going to talk more about the book, but I feel like your history and your writing is just so fascinating that I kind of dug into it. So, I appreciate you spending your time teaching us how you do what you do.
Yeah, it's a unique industry for sure.
So, I'm gonna let you go, and I appreciate you being here. And I really love that everybody was here and had some good questions, and that we had a really great conversation. But Lucy, thank you. We look forward to your next books, and we're just so impressed with what you do every day.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Oops, I'm trying to.